This is Indian Country Today.
Esquili, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Tholahungva. The staff at Indian Country Today is off for the holidays, so we've prepared this program for you, featuring 2 interviews with newsmakers we had on our program this year. In August, the very funny cartoonist Ricardo Caté helped the state of New Mexico create a coloring book urging kids to stay safe in this pandemic.
I guess I started with the lockdown, and as that progressed into as the whole pandemic progressed, you know, whatever was on the news, I started drawing on a day-to-day basis.
And you do that. You follow what's going on in the world, and so that ends up into cartoons that you have, and very funny. And people are very familiar with your work and the little Indian characters that you have expressing their disbelief at whatever. Secretary Trujillo, tell us about how this how the data in New Mexico shows how tribes there are being disproportionately affected by the coronavirus.
Yeah, thanks, Patty. I mean, I think as we all know, unfortunately, many of our Native American and Alaska Native relatives continue to be disproportionately impacted and really suffer from high prevalence and mortality rates. We've seen, luckily here in New Mexico, the latest statewide data shows that 32.9% of positive cases here in New Mexico are Native American and Alaska Native. We've seen a flattening of that curve, which I think has been phenomenal. And I really want to commend tribal leaders, I think, for taking swift action in their tribal communities to protect their homelands and their citizens.
And what is the goal of this coloring book?
Well, I mean, I think the goal of this coloring book is to provide education, which I think we still need in relation to COVID, in a way that's culturally relevant. I think through the humor and that Ricardo exhibits through his own work, you know, we can teach lessons that will be impactful to our young ones, and also maybe their parents or their grandparents who are watching them or maybe coloring with them too.
And so when this idea came about of creating this coloring book, did you guys give him ideas or did you just let him loose?
You know, I think, I don't think you can really give Ricardo Caté ideas. He has his own ideas. I think we're really fortunate to have been able to collaborate with Ricardo, who's a phenomenal artist. I mean, the state has done a lot to put out resources and guidance to tribal communities. And so we were able to take that information and then combine it with Ricardo's talent.
And so Ricardo, when they came to you and said, hey, this is our big idea, what was your first thought?
Like Madame Trujillo said, I come up with these ideas, and like I said, I'd already been drawing them, and so from not only a parent or a community member standpoint, but from a teacher standpoint, I'm also a teacher, and I work a lot with kids. In fact, I've been passing out art supplies in our community the same week that they had asked me. So it was just when this fell into my lap, so to speak, it was a very opportune time for that to happen, because I was thinking about kids at the time and wondering how I could help them a little more, and this comic cartoon coloring book seemed to be right up that alley. So it was a very opportune time.
Well, I have to admit, when I saw the cartoon with the smoke signal and the shape of the coronavirus, like I literally burst out laughing. It was so funny to me, that message, you know, that it's bad news.
Yeah, I wanted to, you know, do it from a Native standpoint, because, you know, there was only some information was starting to come out, but I wanted something specifically for Native communities, and especially for the kids. And so I was very happy to do this. And so they pretty much let me loose. They just gave me the information. I took the information and put a humorous spin on it, and that's basically all I did.
Well, you make it sound so simple, and yet, you know, I know that a lot of thought went into this, and we're hearing the headlines. You know, in the beginning, especially back in April and May, the pueblos were shutting down, and tribes across the country. In fact, there are tribes that are still have barricades up that don't want people to come into their tribal lands because they are trying to contain the coronavirus here. And so your cartoon that, you know, you see two people or a person trying to gain entry into the pueblo there, and he says, "What if your girlfriend's aunt's boyfriend's cousin is from here?" And that sounds so native, right?
Well, actually, I was one of those people that was guarding the entrance to our village, and so that actually kind of happened, but it wasn't so long. It was just like, my cousin's girlfriend's from here. Can I get in? And I thought that was pretty funny. So I draw a lot from personal experiences. And just last night, I was booking it back from Santa Fe, trying to make it back because we still have that 9 o'clock curfew in our village. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Again, yes, tribes are continuing to hold those barricades. Secretary Trujillo, I'll put you on the spot. Which is your favorite cartoon in the coloring book?
Oh, there's so many. I love that one. I mean, because it is actually really true, and I mean, I know that's true. I don't. I think that has to be actually. I love the one with the hand sanitizer where he's asking, "So good, you brought water from the river." She has a pot in her head. No, this is hand sanitizer.
You're hauling hand sanitizer.
You gave me an idea for how to get hand sanitizer out into our communities.
Yeah, well, I wasn't sure about that one when I first drew it. I was like, am I getting too much into the traditional aspect of Pueblo culture? But you know, it's all good. I mean, you know, you see these pictures of women with the pottery on their head, and so I always have to think about and try to basically censor myself so I don't, you know, step on any toes. But I'm glad this coloring book turned out really nice, and I'm glad it's making. Hopefully it makes a huge impact on what we're trying to do here to educate everyone.
Well, you have a cartoon about two people who are supposed to be dance partners in a traditional dance, and they're saying, you know, we have to stay 6 feet apart from each other. And we're seeing that, you know, now we're having powwows that are social media powwows online, and they're having a lot of fun with that. And so how do we continue traditions but in a different way in this pandemic? And I think that cartoon spoke to that.
Yeah, one time I had a partner. She was like 6 feet away, and then it just turned out she didn't like me.
That was before the pandemic. Okay.
Yeah, I know. This is before the pandemic, so there was no excuse. But yeah, I'm really happy that this cartoon book turned out this way. Although I don't have a book yet. I haven't seen the coloring book yet. I haven't
Oh
gotten it
no.
yet.
Oh gosh, how can we fix that, Secretary?
Well, here's
Oh,
your
man.
copy, Ricardo.
Okay.
It's
Where are you
beautiful.
anyway? Are you in Santa Fe?
Okay, Santa Fe. We'll get you someone
Okay.
out to Santo Domingo too. So we'll make sure that you get a copy of your own coloring book.
And yeah,
Now,
and if I might say, I have a lot of time and stuff. If there's any way that I could personally deliver the coloring books and work with kids and even talk to them anywhere, anytime, you know, let me know. I would love that opportunity. So.
For sure.
well, that's really wonderful. And Secretary Trujillo, you made this coloring book in a download form, so anyone, anywhere, can download the coloring book and spread this information and have fun while they're learning and getting reminded about being careful when it comes to washing your hands and socially distancing and things like that.
Yeah, Patty, it's available on our website, www.iad.state.nm.us. So it's downloadable. We're also really excited because we've been approached by a foundation to pay for another reprinting that we would really like to get out to our urban Indian centers and different organizations. The first round of books went out to the sovereign nations here in New Mexico, but we would really love to get those out to our urban Indian centers and communities.
And tell us about the social media campaign you have going on, because again, that's another fun part of this whole coloring book activity. You have the hashtag StudisNM.
Yeah, and I think Ricardo can talk to what Studis means, but I think we also want to make sure that there's an opportunity for everyone, I mean, little ones, but everyone, to draw their own cartoon and to share it and to use the hashtag to do that. We love to share people's cartoons and their artwork, and so I think that's a part of it.
Very good. Ricardo, StudisNM.
Yeah, I came. I can say I came up with that, but I had been seeing Studis, which is a lingo for natives for let's do this, and then Skoden, which is well, let's go then. It's just lingo that have been appearing on Facebook, and so it's been very popular. So when we were at a meeting and they were trying to come up with some catchphrase, and it just came out. It just popped out. The native in me just spoke up, and the non-natives were just looking at me. They were like, "What is that?" And I had to explain to them. And when I did, they absolutely loved it. And so and then I'm sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, what have I done? Is this right?" Or I wasn't sure if but it turns out it was the perfect catchphrase for this. And
It was. And you know what, Ricardo? It's time for us to Skoden. Thank you so much for joining us, Ricardo Caté.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And Secretary Lynn Trujillo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Patty. Good to see you, Ricardo. Everybody take care.
You can still download the coloring pages by visiting the website newmexico.gov.
This is Indian Country Today.
In early October, Larissa FastHorse got a phone call that's changing her life. She won one of the prestigious MacArthur Awards that recognizes outstanding work in the arts, education, and other professional pursuits. It's also known as the Genius Award, and it comes with a prize of $625,000. She says it was hard to keep this a secret until the awards were announced publicly.
It's really hard, and they are serious about their secrecy. My assistant read one of my emails before I had a chance to move it somewhere where she couldn't see it, and they freaked out. They were really worried about it. Secrecy is essential, so you're only allowed to tell one other human. So I told my husband, and then my assistant knew, so she was able to help me out with a lot of the things he had to do to prepare for the announcement.
Well, I'm sure that must have been a surprise for you. I mean, in your career, people work really hard, in their careers, and then to be honored and recognized like this has got to be just amazing.
Yeah, it was really shocking. I had absolutely no idea. I mean, people often said, "Oh, you kind of knew it was happening," because they interview people for up to a year before you get the award, people in your field, people that you've worked with, etc. And I had absolutely no idea. I was completely shocked. In fact, I thought they were calling to hire me to help them create maybe a new Indigenous program or something. I had no idea that this is what it was for.
Wow. Well, the award comes with this nice cash prize, and we'll get to that in a minute here, but you were recognized for, they said, creating this space for Indigenous artists and stories and experience in mainstream theater and countering the misrepresentation of Native American perspectives in the broader society. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you've done?
Yeah, I've been so fortunate to be able to do work with a lot of different Indigenous communities, and then also with different theater companies, connecting them to their local Indigenous communities. So I kind of have two tracks of work. One of them you're very familiar with, which was with Cornerstone Theater Company. And we've been working with Indigenous communities so far in Los Angeles, in the greater Phoenix, Arizona area, and now we're working in South Dakota with my people, the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people. And creating large pieces where people tell their own stories and represent themselves in those stories. And then on the other side, I've been working in traditional theater companies, telling stories that Indigenous people ask me to tell. Again, I consult with Indigenous folks and say, what do you want told? How do you want to be represented? And then I do a lot of work in these traditional theaters to connect them. I always say you need to know who your local Indigenous people are. And we find a way to make sure that they're all connected, that they start to have a relationship, and that they start to give back, because theaters are living on stolen land. And it's really important to me that they understand that. And I facilitate those connections to get them to see how they can start giving back to Native people.
And what are some of the misrepresentations your place have tackled?
Oh, wow, so many. Where do we start, right? I mean, just the theater is incredible, and that we're smart, intelligent, contemporary people. I mean, I had a woman at a theater gathering once say to me, "I never would have guessed you're Native American. You're so well spoken." People still say things like that. This is an educated woman, so we've all heard it, but I think it's really important that the rest of the world hasn't heard it. Also, for instance, in Los Angeles, when I was working with indigenous people there from this land, the Tongva, Quiche, Gabrielino people, they said, look, we want you to write to the white people. We will need them to know we exist, because they were declared extinct by the federal government and they have not been able to get recognition back. And so they said, look, we need you to tell them, because we need all the allies we can get to help us. And they are still fighting for that recognition today. But whatever little bit I can do through theater to help more people understand those fights, I'm thrilled to be able, that people will trust me and give me the ability to tell their stories in the ways that they want them to be told.
Well, the arts through the years, of course, has always been that segment that really can shine a light on social injustice and put it in a way that maybe is less threatening than, say, a protest or something like that. And now, we're living in a time of a pandemic, So what kind of art are you creating in this pandemic?
Yeah, it's interesting because my theater tends to be, my theater work, I write forward. I try to write to the future and what we're going to be facing next. And to be honest, I don't know, right? Because things have been so crazy that I really don't know what's coming next. So it's been hard for me to work on theater pieces. We were right in the middle of working on our piece in South Dakota, which is a long-term community engaged piece. We were spending time with people. We have all these wonderful community partners. We were going to spend the whole summer there, and then the pandemic hit. And so we really changed our focus right away. Obviously, we're not traveling. We're based in California, and we didn't want to be, we were such a bad state as far as spreading COVID, so we did not want to risk that. So we're staying here in California. We're doing analog ways of connecting. We're getting masks from different theater communities, having theater people make masks and send them to different indigenous communities. We've been working with the Hopi and the Dene Nations up there in Apache land in Arizona, and using our contacts in the theater world to get supplies, get things to people when they needed it. And so that's really where we switched our focus to while we've been waiting out, when we can gather again and start making theater.
Well, so everything is kind of on hold here, and it's just interesting. I mean, how do you, I never thought I'd live in the pandemic. What about you? What are your thoughts of being in the pandemic and living through this? Because, you're a writer, you have an opportunity to write, and in a generation, 100 years from now, people are going to look back and see how we reacted in this pandemic.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I've been fortunate that I've had work during this time. I have some film and television work I've been doing. I wrote a movie for Disney, and I have a TV project I'm developing at NBC, and some other projects that I'm putting together. So I've had work for hire, my job work that I've had to deliver during this time. So I've really been focused on that, which has been such a gift, so that my family can continue to, live and pay our rent and buy food during this time when the theaters are all closed. Because I lost a tremendous amount of work from theater when all the theaters closed. However, yeah, I'm not sure yet how I'm going to write about this time. I do have a digital piece that's going to be coming out sometime either this winter or early next spring. That is what I felt like we needed right now. It's about joy. And it's about trying to use this strange digital space that you and I are on right now, and helping us mourn, helping us grieve, but then also helping us together move on to joy, because I feel like that's what we're missing right now. There's so much grief and so much mourning. And when you're in person, we support each other through that, and then we get to a better, more cathartic place. And so I'm going to see if there's a way to do that online through theater and help us all have just a little bit of joy in the middle of all this difficulty.
Well, it certainly is a need there, that joy, because in this pandemic, people are not able to get out and be together. And I know people who've been on Zoom in the morning at a funeral service and in the afternoon at a wedding. So it's a different world that we're in right now. Let's go back to your writing here. As a writer, do you have total control over your characters, or do they sometimes surprise you?
Oh, my characters always surprise me. I have no idea what they're going to do. I don't write from outlines. I write very organically. I do a lot of research, and when I say research as an Indigenous person, I mean a lot of first-person research, right? Because we can't trust everything that's written down, right? Probably most of what's written down in history and such. So I do a lot of interviews, talk to a lot of people, pay a lot of consultants to talk with me, and tell me, what's appropriate to put in my plays. And then I put all that information in my head, and suddenly characters appear, and they just start talking, and they start doing things. And once they go, I just write down what they say as fast as I can, and I don't always know what's going to happen. I once had a character kill himself, and I was so upset. I started burst into tears. The woman at the next table, I was in a coffee shop, asked me if I was okay. I was so upset because I had no idea he was going to do that. And so, it's wild how they take on their own life. But then, then there's a vetting process after that, right? So once I've written down what they've done and how they're going to speak to each other and gotten to some kind of end, then there's this whole process where then I bring these stories back to the community, and I bring the script back and say, what did I get right? What did I get wrong? What needs to be changed? And then I also, as a dramatist, which is what a playwright is, I then have to go through and craft with different collaborators a really well-told story, make sure it takes the audience on the journey we want it to go on. And so, there's all that happens that where hopefully I can wrangle the characters into doing some things I want them to do, but I don't always win.
Well, it sounds like an incredible process there. How do you know when to end a play?
Wow, yeah, that's a good question. They tend to just stop, honestly, because I see it like almost like a movie in my head. And the characters tend to just find themselves in ending and they stop. And then again, like the rewrite process, right? So this whole process of going back to community and working with collaborators, often the endings get rewritten the most. They may be rewritten, 30, 40, 50 times before you finally see it on the stage. I mean, that's how often things get reworked as a playwright. And that's just part of the job is, rewriting, and getting a lot of input from a lot of people until we all agree that we think we got it right.
And so when you're, I once had a creative writing teacher tell me that every word you put down is like your little baby. And so when an editor comes along and takes away your words, they're taking away your babies. How do you distance yourself from that so you don't feel personally upset when your writing has changed? And that could come from an actor in the play or somebody else.
Yeah, well, it doesn't mean I don't feel upset, but but I'm really fortunate that I started into writing actually in film and television first, and that is a ruthless place to be a writer. You don't own the work, so you're just a writer for hire, meaning they hire you to write this thing, but the studio or the network or whoever, they own everything you write. So you don't have final say over how it's portrayed or what's said. And so I started in that world, so I was used to that. That's just how it is. And so when I got into theater, where the playwright has final say, because I own all my plays, and I'm finally the person that has control over who gets to do them, it was really interesting when people were so precious about stuff. I'm like, oh, that's fine. If you don't like it, we'll just cut it. Oh, just cut that scene. It doesn't matter. I'm not precious about it at all. I mean, yeah, I might miss it, but the thing that's wonderful about writing is there's an infinite number of words. Like they never run out. So you can use all these words, and then you can erase all these words, and then there's going to be just as many words to replace them, that they never run out. And so I just have a real trust that between myself and my skill and my imagination and all the collaborators and all the communities I work with, there are enough words that'll last forever, and I don't have to worry about them. So these go, new ones will come in, and I just trust that process. And yeah, I mean, sometimes it does hurt because I'll be like, oh, I love that scene. But then I'll find a way to use something like it in a different script. It just didn't belong there, and they'll go somewhere else.
That's great, Larissa. So it's always interesting to hear what non-natives say when they learn something about Native Americans for the first time. And you mentioned a few comments that you've had personally, but from your plays, what are some of the comments you can share with us people have said, once they've been enlightened?
Yeah, it's a mix, right? I mean, I've had some really negative things said or some just really goofy things. I wrote a play once, and I don't read reviews actually now, but I did early in my career, and I've chosen just to stop for my own good health and creativity. But one early one I read was a play called What Would Crazy Horse Do? And it very clearly said in the program that this is a fictional tribe I created for this particular play. It's a tribe that's about to go extinct. It's about the last two members. So it's a fictional tribe. And, you know, it explains that. And the reviewer said, well, FastHorse didn't teach us anything about this tribe. They didn't help this tribe at all. No one left understanding them. And, you know, all these things. I was like, it's not real. Like, it's just, you know, people put that pressure on us that everything we do has to be educational and cultural. And you know, my job is to be an artist and tell good stories. That's how I educate, is to help people feel empathy and connect with Indigenous people in our stories in a different way. The good news is, I'd say the vast majority of people that at least I hear from, people are pretty nice, you know, after they come to my plays, are really moved and really moved not, and my goal, I don't preach at people. My goal is not to beat people into guilt. My goal is to motivate people into action.
We hope you enjoyed hearing from Larissa FastHorse and Ricardo Caté. Take care of yourselves. Your life is precious. I'm Patty Thawahungva. Thank you for watching.
You got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
Indian Country Today is recorded at the Phoenix Indian School Visitor Center in Phoenix, Arizona.
This is Indian Country Today.